Welcome to Lovespell Podcast. I'm Lovespell, hoodoo practitioner and conjurer of root work, student in divination, and brought to you here directly by my ancestors and guides. Up in here, we can be mixing up a little potion of love, life, and liberation. Ingredients includes, but is not limited to, a handful of Black spirituality, a dash of mental health issues and how to heal from them, sprinkling in a little bit of Black history with a dollop of getting to know thyself. We're going to be stirring up the pot on all things Black, and this brew is lit and on the fire. So as we go through this learning journey together, let's set our intention to awaken the oppressed, address, and digress. Let's talk about it. Hello to all my listeners out there. Before I get started with my episode, I wanted to speak. I missed the episode before. I didn't publish an episode, and I'm kind of disappointed in myself. And I was thinking about it. I was thinking about the things that have transpired, and the reasons why. And I guess I figured maybe I should just come over here and be as transparent as I can, because this project of mine, this podcast, is something I felt called to do, not to get any monetization for it, not to, I don't know, I think I wanted to just write, just do something for myself. And whoever decided to support me in doing things for myself would be, even more better. But between that first day that I was guided to do such a thing and today, I have had my own set of trials and tribulations, I would say. I know that I struggle with something, I guess you would call like imposter syndrome. I struggle with that a lot. And I guess what I'm talking about, what's going on with me, is kind of hinging on what is going to be the episode that I'm talking about today. But pretty much dealing with the idea of not feeling supported, not knowing where things are going, having fear of the unknown. And although I didn't do this project to get any support, I didn't do this project to, have that, I still worry that I won't. If that's making any sense. And in that, I kind of set myself up for like self-sabotage or talking myself out of doing something. And I had to go back to what was the reason or the purpose in which you were doing it in the first place. It was for me. Lovespell. So, better late than never. I am continuing this journey because I am supposed to and because I was called to it. And whatever happens, happens. But I am setting a contract with myself that I will do 30 episodes. Regardless of what happens. And for all the people who listen to me, for all the people who find some type of help through this or learn anything, if you get anything out of it, I thank you for being here with me. Enough about me. Let's talk about the episode. Nothing ever goes away until it has taught us what we need to know. Pema Chodron. Shadow work. The shadow is the you that you'd like to keep secret. The parts of you that you have shamed, that make you uncomfortable to talk about or make you feel embarrassed. It's usually the things that make you seem weak to the outside world, or at least in your eyes. It could be simple things like cringy behavior or thoughts or things that you've said in the past, right up to the large things like trauma or repressed emotions. Everyone has a shadow. It's a place where we dump the things that we feel make us less desirable. Today, we're going to explore our shadow side, what it is, why we have it and its purpose, and why we should consistently be aware of its contents. Today's episode is called Mask Off. Shout out to Future. Okay, so what's the shadow? Or the shadow side? The shadow is a compartment of your psyche where we hide parts of ourselves we deem distasteful or not to be seen by ourselves or others. It's a necessary function in order to sort through the many behaviors, ideas, and emotions that we encounter within our lifetime. Now, we can deem a lot of things to be distasteful. There are certain behaviors that got shunned by another family member, maybe a parent. There are certain behaviors or ideas that didn't work out for you or had some trauma attached to them later on in life. Certain ways that you dress can be put in the shadow side, or wanting, ideas of being too risque can be put in the shadow side because something, happened. For example, I know a girl who dressed really modestly, and what I believe is that she, in her younger days, used to dress very provocative, and a older gentleman that was related to her did some creepy things, made her feel extremely uncomfortable. So she associated the way that she dressed with the behavior that she got from somebody else. And so she repressed any ideas of being sensual or feminine or sexual in any manner, placing that into her shadow self because it is a part of her. And she displays or puts on a mask of modesty. Now, this is her now, but her original behavior was something else. And it was repressed due to a circumstance. It always doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It's just that we end up repressing way more than we put on display. And so you start to have the shadow side that is way bigger than your actual self. But both of them are you. So then you just have this side that's hidden from yourself, or that you've been hiding from yourself, and you don't even know its contents. You start to get to the point where you don't even know what things you actually feel on the other side. So naturally, in order to create a presentation of ourselves, we display behaviors, emotions, and ideas that are deemed acceptable, pleasing, and a show of strength. This is our mask. This mask, or these things that we show that are acceptable, come from all kinds of places. They come from our upbringing. They come from the things that we have, i.e., been traumatized by or have not been traumatized by. It comes from social media, society. It comes from our peers. It comes from a lot of different places, things that are aesthetically pleasing to us or whatever. But acceptability depends on the person, it depends on the time, and it depends on what is going on in their lives. And so things that are unacceptable to some people may be acceptable to others. And sometimes you can create unacceptability for things that should be acceptable. And then that's when the adversity comes in. That's when you start having problems where your shadow side is showing up negatively in your actual life. We'll get into that a little bit later. So, technically, all the other characteristics that we do not like are crammed into the shadow side of us. But technically, we attempt to repress these behaviors, emotions, and ideas. But things that are repressed do not actually leave the body. So the shadow becomes its home. The shadow's original function is for protection. Just as the brain will black out during physical trauma to protect the body from intense pain, the shadow will hold on to trauma and emotional pain to protect the person from living eternally in the trauma or mental anguish. The mind's ability to move heartache to another space in order to continue functioning without heartache being in its main focal point allows a person to live without being over subdued by one emotion. No matter who you are or who you know, every single person has a shadow side to them. The problem is not the shadow side, because the shadow side is made there for protection. But the shadow side does have a flaw. It's not that you have one that's the problem. It's that you hide things so deeply in the shadow side that you may hide them from yourself as well. And then also the things that you do hide there might be things that you need for success, to take care of yourself, to fulfill your life. For example, you can put major traumas, things like that in your shadow side, but you can also put things like success or the need for success. You can put independence. You can put your personal power or your emotional sensitivity inside of your shadow side as well. You can deem those things to be unacceptable and try to repress them as well. And I know you probably say it to yourself, well, who in the world will repress independence or personal power? But think of it like this. Let's say you grow up with a parent who is a narcissist, and that parent does not want you to be independent because your independence will not allow for them to be able to exact their narcissistic behavior on you. So they teach you that being independent is wrong. You are punished for doing independent acts, and you are made to feel uncomfortable when you assert your independence. A child like that will start to repress the behavior or the feelings of independence and place that independence into their shadow side. So now the shadow was doing a function that it's not created to do, but it will do so in order to protect the child as it is deemed so to do. But here's the problem. When you have somebody that thinks of independence as, something unacceptable, something not to bring to the surface, something that people don't need to see, and that you don't even know that you've put it in a place or you've put it in your shadow side, you think that's part of your natural function. How do you fix it? Without going to your shadow side and opening up its contents. According to Carl Jung, the person who coined the term shadow side, in order to be a balanced person, we must fully see our shadow side. When we are balanced, having knowledge in the things that we are avoiding, embracing them within ourselves, it improves our ability to navigate both sides of any situation. Our relationships, creativity, and dealing with emotions will all be affected by the ability to understand the full range of emotions you may have in these situations. When we deny or repress something, it is like telling a lie. Everybody knows that the biggest problem with the lie is that it becomes larger than the lie itself. Because not only do you have to keep up the lie, but you have to lie to protect the lie. When you hide a part of yourself or repress it, you have to work hard at repressing and continuing to repress that thing. But you might have to repress other things in order to repress the original thing, or you may be outed. People who are on the verge of being outed in their shadow side become defensive. start to show signs of hostility, possessiveness, and they're unable to release the emotion behind it. This is when your shadow side needs to be purged. Also, what you hide in your shadow side might be a characteristic another does not. So you might run across somebody that you project disdain for their character, that you truly believe that their behavior is a problem when really you are the one with the problem. I'll give you an example of that. I remember talking to a person, and she was telling me that she did not like when she'd be in a room or be in a space with other people, and a person with high energy would come into the room. Somebody that was too excitable, somebody that would I guess you would consider to be like high strung or something like that. She called it too happy. And for her, it sounded correct. You could tell that it was part of her shadow side, her repressing her happy behavior or being too happy. And I don't know where it came from. Like, why was she repressing that behavior? But I did have a conversation with her about why someone else's happiness would bring her so much disdain. Now, I'm sure that she would probably have to dig deeper into her psyche to figure that out. But when somebody walks into a room who is feeling joyous and the first thing you feel is bothered, the person who is happy is not the problem. Usually, when something is like something that's supposed to be, there's nothing wrong with being happy. There's nothing wrong with being, joyous or having, large amounts of energy. That is a personal effect. It is something that is going on internally. It has nothing to do with the outside world. It is that person and their own life's, happiness. And for someone else to find problem in that, to find issue in that, usually means that it is something that is repressed or something that they don't feel like they can do, or they are not supposed to do, or was told that they're not supposed to do. And so to see someone else doing it brings about feelings of resentment, brings about feelings of being bothered by it or making it out to be something that is negative because they weren't allowed, or they've told themselves that they're not allowed. So this is where your shadow side shows up unknowingly. And the thing about the shadow side is that not only does it hide your repressed emotions, but it also lashes out as well, or allows you to lash out without being actually held accountable for your behaviors. So when you repress those things or those emotions or those feelings and those behaviors, and you're unaware of what you repressed, when you are triggered by something outside or externally, they will come to the surface. Your shadow side makes up 65% of your behavior externally. So although your shadow side may seem like the small compartment that you drop all of your fears and repressed feelings and emotions and behaviors, it is actually the bigger portion of yourself. And the mask that you wear every day is less of you. So who's really running the show? Your shadow side shows up when you are angry. Your shadow side shows up when you are triggered by other people's behavior or external things that go on. Your shadow side shows up when you are fearful, when you are embarrassed, and when you are about to be outed. A lot of times, if you blame others for certain behaviors, like if you have a thing where, for example, you say a lot like, oh, nobody shows up for me. Nobody ever shows up for me. The question is, you should ask yourself rather, is how many times have you showed up for other people? Because usually what you're projecting out on other people is what you actually fear you are, or you are internally in your shadow self. And so you project what you are on other people. As a way of protection, as a way of not knowing, or part of your not knowing, maybe. So if you say that, if you got 1,000,000 haters, for example, you might be the hater, boo. Who knows, But what I'm saying is that the shadow self makes up for a very large portion of our lives. And that state of denial that people are in, that portion of your life where you don't know what's going on, you don't know what's going wrong, you don't know why you can't get over a certain hurdle, you don't know why in every relationship you are reacting or behaving in that certain type of way. You say stuff like, I just can't help myself, I just don't know why I keep trying. It is because you have not broken down, you have not emptied the compartments of your shadow self, you have not delved into the inner workings of your shadow. You know what lives in your shadow self? Your inner child lives in your shadow self. Everything that was beat down out of that child emotionally, verbally, is there, unpacked luggage. In order to have balance within your life where you can navigate the world, you have to first navigate yourself. Your lack of accomplishment, your lack of drive, your lack of ambition, your fear, your doubt, and your losses are not starting with someone else and their external behavior. It originates with you and your shadow self. I will say that doing shadow work is not easy whatsoever. It's an ongoing process, and I promise you that I've been doing shadow work and I still haven't fully dug into who I am or what I have repressed completely. The problem with digging into yourself is that you don't want to. And you realize that you created something like, I think of myself as like those dolls, those little dolls that they put in, like, when you open one box and then the new box is another doll in the next box. It's not really a doll. It's like a box after box after box of these boxes that look like dolls. That's what I feel like shadow work is like. It's like you think you'll scratch the surface. You'll talk about, the things that ail you when you journal or you write it down or you speak to somebody, and you'll feel like you're being honest and forthcoming in the beginning. And even in doing that, as you're talking or even as you're writing, you're still avoiding saying certain things. You're still avoiding opening up about the event as it truly happened, because not only did you repress it, but you hid it so deeply from yourself that you can't even remember the full scope of what happened in that, trauma, let's say. And then if you can get past that, if you can get to the point where you can say outright what happened and be open about one thing, you'll come to realize that it's the biggest part of a whole thing, or the smaller part of a whole thing. You'll come to realize that was the end of a toxic situation. And now you have to follow the breadcrumbs of that story back to the beginning of that toxic situation. You start to realize that your shadow is a rabbit's hole. And it's not to say that everything that you've ever experienced was traumatic. But the idea that maybe everything that you ever experienced, you're creating into a trauma because you never dealt with the original. That now you're starting to make all parts of you that don't work out, that don't get, don't look like accomplishment, doesn't look like what everybody else's look like, doesn't, that you don't respect, or doesn't get respected by somebody else. All of those things becomes like repress that, hide that then. That doesn't go, okay, well that's not me either. Oh, put that away then. You know what I'm saying? To the point that you're just putting away all parts of you. To the point that the mask is so big that it covers your whole face. It is now you. You don't even know who you are. If you ask yourself the right questions, you'll start to fall down the rabbit hole. And you're not going to like what you find there. Doing shadow work is not getting rid of what you don't like. It's just bringing your shadow into the light. It's being okay with all parts of you. Not just the things that you deem acceptable and the things that you deem able to be viewed by other people. It's loving the things that you think that no one's going to like about you. But in order to love those things, you have to actually know what they are. So, is it mask on or mask off? If you have any suggestions on topics for me to talk about, if there's something that's ailing you or something that you know will be a great topic for my show, I would love to hear your suggestions. You can hit me up. If you have Instagram, you can DM me at Lovespell _888. Again, Lovespell _888. And then if you don't have Instagram, you can email me at lovespell.888@gmail.com. Again, it's lovespell.888@gmail.com. Also, if you would like to be interviewed, you feel like you have something to contribute or some information that you'd like to give to the world, a topic that you'd like to discuss, bring some value to this podcast for me, hit me up. I love to talk to you. You've been listening to Lovespell's podcast. I'm Lovespell, sending you gratitude and appreciation for your listening ear. I feel blessed to have had you as my guest as we stirred up the pot on all this mess. We've taken time to awaken the oppressed, addressed, and now it's time to digress. Don't worry, boo. I'll be talking off your ear on the next episode. Bye for now.